Hey everyone and welcome to this video. In this video, we will be analysing the poem The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats. This video is part of my CA for the course 20th Century English Literature done under Assistant Professor Shubhankar Shah of Parvatibai Chowgule College of Arts and Science, Autonomous, Goa, India. So, without further ado, let's begin. William Butler Yeats was an Irish poet, dramatist and writer. He was one of the most influential poets of the 20th century, winning the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. Yeats was inspired by the scenery, folklore and supernatural legends of his childhood while living with his grandparents in Sligo, Ireland. He was also inspired by the mysticism of the Theosophical Society that he joined during his journey of becoming a professional writer. He began as a romantic poet but slowly transitioned into a modernist poet. His poems revolve around Irish mythology, love, loss, and politics, among other themes. The cultural movement of modernism was known as the Age of Change or the Age of Transition. It grew out of the scientific, political, ideological, and philosophical shifts that happened as a result of the Industrial Revolution. This reached its peak on the eve of World War I. Modernist writers and poets always wanted to break away from romantic cliches. Poets like Gertrude Stein began experimenting with style and syntax, moving away from traditional forms of poetry. Modernism also popularized stream of consciousness, a term coined by an American psychologist, William James, to describe the natural flow of a person's thoughts. The Second Coming was written by Yeats in 1919, in the aftermath of the First World War. This period also coincided with the Irish War of Independence, which also coincided with the flu pandemic. After the war, Yeats thought that European society had completely broken down, and this poem proved to be a terrifying prediction of future violence. With the rise of Hitler and fascism in the 1930s, many found this poem to be disturbingly prophetic. If you haven't read this poem, I urge you to pause the video, read it and get back. So the Second Coming is a darker, mysterious take on the Christian belief of the prophesied Second Coming of Jesus Christ. The first stanza describes a world of chaos and confusion and pain. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The second stanza begins by giving us some hope. Surely some revelation is at hand, surely the Second Coming is at hand. But in a twisted turn of events, this vision of the future replaces the savior with a rough beast. Yeats literally foreshadowed the rise of Hitler. The Second Coming is written in blank verse, which means that it has a consistent meter, roughly an iambic pentameter, and an irregular rhyme scheme. It has 22 lines divided into two stanzas. The first stanza has 8 lines, while the second stanza has the remaining 14. This poem has a number of clever imagery, symbols, wordplay, as well as figures of speech. The falcon in the first stanza is a representation of man's control over the world. The fact that the falcon can no longer hear the falconer symbolizes the loss of this control. Obviously, Yeats was referring to the First World War that had just taken place, and the chaos and confusion that came with it. We also see the gyre, one of the few recurring symbols in Yeats' poems. It is sort of like the Chinese concept of yin and yang, but here it means the constant cycle between order and chaos, or growth and decay. In the second stanza, the speaker has a vision of a beast with a lion's body and a man's head. This type of hybrid creature was quite common in various mythologies. It symbolizes nature going wrong, again talking about humanity being on the path to self-destruction. There are also a ton of biblical references in the poem. Firstly, the title of the poem, The Second Coming, is an allusion to the second coming of Christ, prophesied in the book of Revelations in the Bible. We can draw parallels between lines 4 to 6 and the story of Noah's Ark in the Bible. According to the story, God flooded the entire world to punish the sinners, except for Noah and his family, and 2 of each kind of animal. The last line of the poem is a reference to Jesus Christ being born in Bethlehem. But in this case, instead of a savior figure, it is a rough beast. The themes present in the poem are civilization, morality, and Christianity. The second coming is all about man's tendency to break out into war and violence and lose control. It's a freaky prediction for the end of humanity. I mean, it was justified as Yeats wrote this poem soon after World War I. The falcon cannot hear the falconer anymore, and the world is spiraling into chaos. The poem also questions morality and Christianity. According to the Bible, the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ will come again to save the worthy when humanity reaches its end times. Even though the blood-dimmed tide drowned the innocent, a Savior is nowhere to be found. But rather, it is a beast that rises out of the ashes to unleash further anarchy. In the end, we can see how the second coming is a modernist poem. It is a rejection of the past. It's full of pessimism, symbolism, and mysticism. It deals with diverse themes such as religion and focuses on realism, using a personal, direct approach. The Second Coming is easily one of the most famous and frequently quoted poems in all of Western literature. It is a frightening testimony of how poets often have a specific perspective, a vision of the way things are that the rest of us are unable to see. If you like this video, do give it a thumbs up. This is me, Nathan James De Silva, signing off. Thank you.